Good morning. Once again, we have our new topic, and that is array. So in this case, we're going to discuss one-dimensional array and two-dimensional array, as well as we're going to discuss the different operations that we have in array. All right. One of the most common and the simplest data object is the ordered or linear list. Okay, so when we say linear list, it is a list of elements having a unique successor. So examples of this list are the list of the months of the year, the days of the week, the grade points, the astrology. So as you can see, as an example, we have here months of the year. So it is a list from elements from January, February, March until December. Okay, and then astrology could be a certain set of values that each of these element has a unique successor. So, we have Aquarius, and the successor of Aquarius is Pisces. An example, the successor of Pisces is Virgo, and so on and so forth. Okay, so these are examples of these are examples of linear lists. Okay, so we have here the most commonly used to represent a linear list, and that is what we call array. Okay, so array is an ordered collection of items that has the same data type. And the length of this array can be denoted by its subscript. Okay, so if we have one subscript, then that is a one-dimensional array. So it is written here that the dimensionality of an array can be determined through the number of subscripts of that array. So if we have two subscripts, so we have a two-dimensional array. If we have only one subscript, then we have a one-dimensional array. Okay. Now, this subscript of the array is placed inside the square brackets. Okay. So as you can see, as an example, here we have two arrays named R and letters. So R has a size of 10. Okay, remember that the length of the array is denoted by its subscript. Okay, so we have only one subscript and the length is 10. So, ibig sabihin, for our array R, at most, it would contain 10 elements. Okay, and each element is of type integer. Okay. Now, for our array named letters, it has 26 elements. So, it could contain 26 elements of the array letters. Okay. Now, the data type of these letters is of type character. So, that could be A to Z, capital or small letter, or any digits or anything that you could see in the keyboard. So, that is what character is. Okay, so it could be special characters too. Now, we have here a graphical representation of our array for us to have a clear picture of how array works and how it is stored. The elements of the array is being stored in the memory. Okay, so we have here an array named R. Okay, as we have mentioned a while ago, the size of that array is 10. So we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have at most 10 elements. Okay. Now, in programming languages, definitely, um, the starting index of the array would vary depending on the programming language. So that means there are some programming language wherein it starts at index 0, while for other programming languages, it starts at index 1. So you have to bear in mind or you have to take into account or take into consideration the programming language that you are using. Okay, what is the starting index of that programming language. Okay? Now, if the starting index of that programming language starts from 0, definitely our indices would be from 0 to 9. Okay? But if the starting index of the array starts at index 1, so definitely that will be from index 1 up to 10. Okay? So everything that is represented in a square bracket, we call that as index. Okay, so if it is plural, then it is indices. Okay, so if we have an index that starts at 0, and I would refer to the fifth element. So what is the fifth element if the index starts at index 0? Very good. Okay. The fifth element would be 75. Okay? If the index starts at index 0. Okay, why? Because it's the first element. 100 is the first element. Second element is 95. Third element is 60. 90 is the fourth element. And 75 is the fifth element. Okay? However, if I would say that the starting index is at index 1. So, if I would refer to the fifth element, okay, if our index starts from 1, then what will be the fifth element? Very good. The fifth element, right, if the starting index will be 1, that means still our fifth element will be 75. Alright? But if I would say R sub 5, okay, and our starting index is at index 0, okay, so what will be the element at R sub 5? Very good. So that will be 80. Okay? It starts from 0. So at index 5, we are referring to the sixth element. Okay? So if I would say, what is the element at index 5? If the starting address is index 0, so that means we are referring to the sixth element. Okay? However, if I'm going to start at index 1, okay, and we want to refer the fifth index, okay, or R sub 5, or at index 5. So what will be the element at index 5? Very good. Okay. If you would start at index 1, then the element at index 5 would be 75. Alright? Next, we have different operations for one-dimensional array and two-dimensional arrays. Okay? So, as you can see, or as a description, no, an array with one subscript is what we call one-dimensional array. Okay? Where the subscript would be from 1 to n, or the subscript will be from 0 to n. Okay? So, what are the operations? We have 7 operations all in all. So, first, we have storing a new value into an element of a one-dimensional array. Second is retrieving the ith element of a one-dimensional array. Third is the reading element of a one-dimensional array, that is from left to right. And then fourth, deleting the element from an array or a one-dimensional array. And fifth, storing the elements of a one-dimensional array in in ascending order. So sorting the elements, sorry. And then six is copying a one-dimensional array. And lastly is merging two one-dimensional array. So we have two one-dimensional array, two different arrays, but both of the arrays are one-dimensional in type. Okay, so let us discuss that one by one. Right. So we have here how are we going to store a certain value to an array. Okay, so given this figure, we have an array named R of size 7. So as you have noticed, I have my index from 0 up to 7. Okay? If my index will be from 0, that will be until 6. Okay? So, for simplicity purposes and for our class, okay, we will always denote the index, or we will always start the index at index 1. Okay, so we have here 7 indices for our 7 elements of the array named R. Why 7? Because the size of the array is 7. Okay. Now, we have here elements such as the orange, grapes, apple, and mango. Okay? And each one of them is stored, sabi niya rito, to index 1, 2, 3, and 4 respectively. So, the orange is placed at index index 1. And then grapes is stored at index 2, apple is stored at index 3, and mango is stored at index 4. Now, let us say we have a new value, lychees, okay? And we want to store lychees at position 2. So, position 2, we also refer at index 2 because we start at index 1. Okay? So, if you want to store the value lychees, and lychees is a constant string, so definitely the word lychee should be enclosed in quotation marks. Okay? So, this is how it is written. And then, since we're going to store lychees at position 2, so we are referring to index 2. So that will be R sub 2 equals lychees. Okay? So 2 is the position. Okay? And R is the name of the array. So we're going to assign lychees to R sub 2. Okay? So from orange, grapes, apple, and mango, when we execute this assignment statement, lychees will be written or will be stored at index 2. Now, as you have noticed, yung grapes nawala. Okay? Actually, it is replaced by lychees. So, it is overwritten. Okay? So, every time we store a new value in the array, definitely it will just overwrite whatever is in that array index. Okay? There is no pop-up menu um, that will state that are you sure you want to store lychees at index 2 because index 2 has a value. Okay? So, walang ganon. If you have this statement. Okay? You could do that, but you have to include additional logic. Okay? So, this is one of the operation of a one-dimensional array, that is storing a new value into a one-dimensional array. Okay? Let's have another example. I want to store, ano pa ba? Avocado. Okay? I want to store avocado as my seventh element. Okay? So how would I do that? Okay? So we have to mention the name of the array. So the array is R. The array is named R. Okay? So R. And then we have to specify the index number. Okay. Now we want to place avocado at index 7. So we will use, or we will write here 7. Okay. So R sub 7 is equal to what is the new value that we want to store? Very good. So we want to store avocado. And avocado is a string, a constant string. So definitely it should be enclosed with quotation marks. So avocado will be stored at index 7 of the array R. So we will have avocado here. Do you follow? Dali lang, di ba? Alright, next. Second operation. Let us say we want to retrieve the ith element. So, I, that means any position of the array. Okay? So, the I is, of course, a subscript of an array. Okay? In this case, suppose we want to retrieve the fifth element of the array. So, all we have to do is to specify the name of the array and the index. Okay, so fifth element, so R sub 5. Okay, that is an assumption that the starting address of the, or the starting index of the array is 1. Okay, now here's the pseudocode for reading the element from left to right. From left to right. Okay, how was it designed? Okay. So as you can see, we have here the name of the array, name of the pseudocode, read array. Normally, we name the name of the array, we name the name of the pseudocode with its purpose. So if the purpose is reading the elements of the array, you could name your pseudocode as read array. Okay? And then notice, inside the parameter, we have two variables. We have R for the name of the array and N for the size of the array. So this is a description. Okay? Now, how this is conceptualized. Okay? Now, we want to read the elements from left to right, and at the same time, we want to display the elements. Okay, so let us have an example. Let us simulate, and at the same time, let us create the pseudocode for that. Okay, though we have it here, but I want you to understand how it happens. Okay, so let us say we have an array. Okay, let us have an array named R. And let us say that the contents of the array are numbers. Okay, so let us have 10, we have 10, 7, 2, 9, 6. Okay, and then when we want to read the elements of the array from left to right, that means we're going to read from the first index up to the last index. Okay, so the last index will be denoted by the size of the array. Okay, so we will read it from 1 to n. Right? So reading that elements, we simply, let's have it here. Read it. So R sub 1, R sub 2, R sub 1, R sub 2, R sub 3, R sub 4, and R sub 5. Okay. Now, if we want to display the content of this array, we simply use print. Okay? Print R sub 1, print R sub 2, print R sub 3, print R sub 4, and print R sub 5. Okay? Now, we cannot do that as in you have to specify each print statement, okay? Kasi, what if the size of the array grows? Let us say the size of the array is 1,000. Would that mean you're going to execute or you're going to type in 1,000 print statements, okay? So, never do that, okay? So, all we have to do is to replace these values 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, okay? Now, R sub 1, we are referring to the value 10. R sub 2, we are referring to the value 7. R sub 3, we are referring to value 2. R sub 4, we are referring to value 9. And R sub 5, we are referring to value 6. Okay? So, this is how it would work if we're going to simply simulate each of these print statement. Okay? Now, how are we going to do this kind of pseudocode? Okay? So, first, we have to name the array. Alright. So, let's have read array. Okay? What are our inputs? So, possible, you may include the input parameters here or not. Okay? But anyway, for consistency, we will place the input statements here. Okay? So, R is the name of the array and N pertains to the size of the array. Okay? Now, meron tayong paulit-ulit na ginagawa, di ba? Print, 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 print. How many times do we print? Or do we execute the statement print? Okay, very good. So, we execute that 5 times. Okay, so 5 times. So, 5 times, ibig sabihin, yung 5, yun yung N. Yeah? So, we will execute print 5 times. So, what are we going to print? We're going to print R sub 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So, we will replace a variable for these numbers 1 to 5. So, we could replace that with I. Okay? So, I. Then, what's the value of I? Our I is from 1 up to, so 1 to N. 1 to 5. Okay? Since this is a loop, paulit-ulit na gagawin. Di ba? Yung I will be 1, will be 2, 3, 4, until it reaches the value of N. So, we may use for loop. Okay? And that's it. Or, if you want to use while loop, we could do also a while loop. Okay? Let us have it here. So we have read. So we have read array. Array is R and the size is N. Okay? And then we have an iteration. Di ba? Kasi meron pa ulit-ulit na gagawin yung print. So that means may loop yun. So we could use while loop. While the value of I, okay, we could have while what's the value of I? I initially is 1. So we will place I equals 1 before while. So I is equal to 1 while I is less than or equal to N. So that means our I from 1 until it reaches 5. If my N is 5. Okay? So, while this condition is true, anong gagawin? Sabi, print. Ulit-ulit yung print. So, print will be enclosed inside the while loop. So, we have print. Print R sub. So, 1 is I, 2 is also I, 3 is also I, and so on and so forth. Okay? And then, after displaying the value of R sub I, what will happen? Okay, it will go back to the loop. However, the value of I remains 1. So, what are we going to do to make this I from 1? It will increment by 1. Okay, very good. So, we're going to include a statement I is equal to I plus 1. Okay? So, we have I is equal to I plus 1. Do you follow? Ano ko na nilagay? So, we have here two statements inside our while loop. Ma'am, syempre, it has a begin, then it should have an end. Okay? Ma'am, can I make use of I++? Okay. Hindi po pwede. Okay? Wala po tayong ganong construct sa ating pseudo code. Okay? Question. So, questions will be entertained. You simply send me a message. Okay? Alright. Going to the third operation. Okay? So, that is deleting an element from a one-dimensional array. So, how are we going to delete an element? Okay? Let us say we have here an array named R of size 5. So, it has the its elements as A, B, C, D, and E. So, if you want to delete that element, alright, moving on to our next operation. Okay, so we have now sorting the elements of a one-dimensional array in ascending manner. Okay, so that means, let us say we have an array named R. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, whose elements are 10, 7, 2, 6. Okay. So we're going to sort the elements in ascending manner. So that means that 10 will be written in the last, and then 2 will be in the first. So 2, 6, 7, 10. Ganun kadali, di ba? However, we should place a logic here, okay? Now, there are different sorting algorithms that we could use, and the most common and the most basic of them all is the bubble sorting. So how do bubble sort works? Bubble sort works this way, okay? It simply tests, okay, compares the first element with the second element, okay? So in comparing the elements, that would be since we are sorting it in ascending manner, if it sees that if the first element is higher than the second element, or vice versa, if the second element is lower or lesser in value than the first element, then it would swap. Okay? Swap. That would be 7, 10. Okay? Now, after that, it would now compare the first element with the third element. Okay? So it's like, let me redraw that. Okay? Let me redraw here. Okay? But anyway, the concept will be like this. The first element will be the one to be tested or compared with the second element as well as the third element up to the last element. Before going to the second element, it will test the third element and then test the fourth element. And then lastly, the third and the fourth element will be tested. Okay, so paano yun? We have an array named R. Okay. I'll just draw I'll just draw first the array. Okay. So at index 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Same is true. Let me first draw my array. So we're going to test how many times? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So we will create 6. We are still referring to one array, array R. However, for simulation or for you to understand, that's why I have to draw this. Okay? Anyway, in the printed module that I have uploaded, I have drawn there the simulation. Okay? So, let us say the elements of the array are 10, 7, 2, and 6. Okay? Now, for the bubble sort, the concept is like this. Okay? The first element will be tested with the second element. Now, if the second element is lower than the previous element, then it will swap. So this will be 7 and this will be 10. Okay? Then 2, 6. Okay? Next, first element and the third element. Okay? So it will test if this is higher than the third element. If it is higher, then swap. Okay? Or vice versa. If this second element, the second set of value is lower than the first, okay, then it will swap. So 2 will be placed here, and 7 will be placed here. 10, and then 6. Okay? And then, next, it will test the first and the last element. Now, 2 is lower than 6. Therefore, no need to swap. So, as is. And then, next, it will now go to the next element. The second element will be tested with the third element. So, if the third element is lower, then it will swap its values. Okay? And the rest as is. Okay? Now, second and fourth element will be tested. Again, 6 is lower than 7, therefore swap. And the rest copy. Okay? And last, our third element will be tested with the fourth element. So that means we're going to test 10 and 7. 7 is smaller than 10. So swap. Okay. Then wala na siya ito-test. Nandun siya sa pinakahuli. Okay? So as you have noticed, we have sorted the element. Okay? From lowest to highest number. So it is sorted in ascending manner. Okay. So this is how it works. Now, how are we going to convert that logic into an actual pseudocode? Okay. Again, let's go back to the concept. The name of the array is sort array. We have an array R and the size is n. Okay? Now, as you have noticed, I have here a test between the first and the second, first and third, first and fourth. Okay? So, sulat ko ha, para mas makita ninyo, para mamaya maintindihan yung paano nangyari to. Okay? So, first, we test R sub 1 if it is or R sub 2 na lang. R sub 2 is less than R sub 1. Okay? Tutugma ko lang dito. Although you could have a different logic. You could have a comparison of R sub 1, the first counter will be greater than R sub 2, the second counter. Okay? So, anyway, for consistency with my pseudocode here, okay, we will test the second element with its previous element. Okay? So, R sub 2 is less than R sub 1. And then the next test we have is R sub 2, is it less than R sub 3? Ay, sorry po. R sub 3 is less than R sub 1. Okay? And then next test will be R sub 4, is it less than R sub 1? Okay? And then next we have R sub 2 again, and then we test with R sub 3. So, dito natin lagay yung 3, dito yung 2. Okay? O, nalilito kayo. So, R sub 2, next, we test it with R sub 4. Okay? And lastly, we test R sub 3 we test it with R sub 4. Okay? Now, look at here. We have 1. Okay? We have 1. We have 2. We have 3. Titingnan na ito. 2, 2. So, 2. 1, 1, 1. So, 1. Okay? So, we could have here variable I. Okay? So, I is from 1 to 3. And then, what the value of I is 1, pansin nyo, we have 2, 3, 4. And then 3, 4. And then 4. So, that means, from 2 to 4. Ano yung 4? Yun yung ating N. So, N. N. And then, the value of the first number, so we could have it named J. Okay? And the value of J initially ay 2 if I is 1. J will be 3 if I is 2. And J will be 4 if I is 3. Therefore, the initial value of J will depend on the value of I plus 1. Tama? So, if my I is 1, 1 plus 1, naging 2. Doon siya nag-start. If my I is 2, 2 plus 1, magiging 3. So, doon siya nag-start with 3. If my I is 3 plus 1, magiging 4. Doon nag-start yung J. Okay? So, how is this? Sige na, gawin na nga lang natin ng bago. Okay? So, we have sort. Sort array. Okay? We have R, we have N. Okay? First, what do we do? Initially, we have I. Okay, I make use of I. Okay, may paulit-ulit na ginagawa. Di ba? Ang paulit-ulit niyang ginagawa ay tinetest niya yung values ng R sub J with the values of R sub I. Okay? Now, as you have noticed, our I goes from 1 to 3. Okay? So, for I equals 1, nagmumukhang equal no? Equal. I, 2. Okay. 3 lang. Ang N natin is 4. So, that is why it is N minus 1. Okay. So, for I is equal, ay, nawala yung ano. Sorry. For I equals challenge pagka ganito lang no? For I equals 1 to N minus 1. Okay? What will happen? Every time we have the value for our I, our J will now have the next value. So, J, so ito, part siya, no? For J, then J is equal to I plus 1. And then, every time we have that value, meron tayong iteration for J. So, every time we have the value of I, J also increments. So, for J equals that value, okay, magiging 2, 3, 4. Umulit ako rito, no? Oh, well, pwede natin palang gawing another variable yan. Pero pwede naman diretso na. Okay? So, pwede ko na itong tanggalin. Dito na siya. For j equals, kaya lang itataas ko, sorry. For j equals I plus 1 to n. Okay? What will happen? We're going to test, di ba? If our R sub j is less than R sub I. If that is less than, okay? If it is less than, what we do, we swap. Okay? So, paano yung pagsaswap? Initially, we could not simply assign. Ano yun? Ano ibig sabihin nun, ma'am? Hindi natin pwedeng i-assign kaagad. Okay, kunwari, let us say R sub I is equal to R sub j. Or vice versa. Pwede din ganun. I cannot assign this one kaagad-agad. What will happen? Dito kasi, in our mind, madali lang, swap, pagpapalitin mo. Pero kapag ka sa computer yan, at ginawa mo yung swap na ganyan lang, na i-assign mo lang, what will happen? Initially, both of them would have value of 10. Magiging ganyan yan. Okay? Not unless you're going to store 10 or 7 to a temporary variable. Okay? That's why we make use of temp. Okay? We need to store temporarily the value na aalisin natin. So, ano ba yung aalisin natin? Yung value, pwedeng depende, no? So, sa atin, ununa nating tanggalin o tatanggalin yung value ni I at ire-replace ng R sub j. So, ganito siya. So, temp is equal to R sub I, then R sub j is equal to R sub I, and then R sub j will now be the value of that temp. Okay? And then that's it. Okay? So, if we're going to simulate that, parang ganito pa rin yan. Okay? O, sige. Simulate natin. Okay? Ito pa rin yung array. Okay? We have, the size of the array is 4. Okay? So, for I is equal to 1, so we have variable I and variable j, right? And our n is 4. Okay. I initially is 1 hanggang maging n minus 1. n minus 1 is 3. So, hanggang 3 lang yung value ni I. Pasok siya doon. For j equals I plus 1, so I plus 1 magiging 2. Hanggang maging n. So, magiging 4. Okay? So, ito compound siya. So, if R sub j is 2, okay, I is 1, okay, ito yun. Diba? So, R sub 2 less than R sub 1. R sub 2, we are referring to the value 7. Hindi nagmukhang 7. Yan. We are referring to 7. And R sub 1, we are referring to 10. Okay? So, para malinaw. So, we have, for the entire R sub j or r sub 2, we are referring to 7. And r sub I, we are referring to the value 10. Okay. Is 7 less than 10? Very good. It is true. So, if it is true, r sub I, remember our I is 1. Okay, palitan muna natin yung mga I. J is 2. Okay. Ay, mali ako ng color. 2. Okay. So, r sub 1, we are referring to 10. Okay. 10 will be assigned to temp. So, we have variable temp. And the value of temp is 10. Okay? And then next, r sub 2. R sub 2 is 7. So, 7 will be assigned to R sub 1. Okay. So, in our array, ganito siya. Okay. So, initially, 10, 7, 2, 6. Okay? Then, sabi niya, R sub 1 equals 7. So, this time, instead of 10, magiging 7 na yan. Kaya, yun yung sinasabi ko kanina. Kaya, we need to temporarily store the value of this one, the one that we're going to replace. Okay? And then temp, the value of temp is 10, and 10 will be assigned to R sub 2. Okay? So, R sub 2 will now be 10. Okay? Next. Balik dun. Sabi hanggang maging 4. So, J will now be 3. Okay? Again, si J lang napalitan, naging 3. Ito lang napalitan, 3. 3. Okay. So, R sub 3, value of R sub 3 is 2. So, magiging 2 na. Kaya na to. And then, R sub 1 is 7. Okay? Is 2 less than 7? So, ito na kino-compare natin. Tama ba? Ito yun. Okay? Ito na kino-compare. Is 2 less than 7? True. So, if it is true, we're going to assign R sub I. R sub I is 1. So, that is 7. 7 will be assigned to temp. Okay? And then next, R sub 3. R sub 3 is 2. 2 will be assigned to R sub 1. So, R sub 1 will be 2. So, ito, pakinggan natin. Ito, magiging 2 naman. Okay? And then next, temp, value of temp is 7. So, 7 will be assigned to R sub 3. R sub 3 will now be 7. Okay. So, we have 2, 10, 7. Ito yun, 2, 10, 7. Okay? Next. Balik tayo dito. Hanggang 4. So, our J will now be 4. Again, we're going to test. So, J, magiging 4. Lahat ng J is 4. Okay. Now, R sub 4. R sub 4. We now refer to 6. Okay. 6. And R sub 1 is 2. Ito yan, di ba? 2. Now, is 6 less than 2? Okay, false. So, kung false, wala siyang gagawin. Kasi ito yung block of statement, di ba? Walang gagawin, babalik lang siya doon sa tumawag sa kanya. Hanggang 4 lang. So, ibig sabihin, tapos na tong sa J. So, babalik siya doon sa outer for loop. Sabi, value of I will be until 3. So, I will be incremented, magiging 2. So, 2, pasok uli doon. J equals I plus 1. So, 2 plus 1, magiging 3. Very good. Hanggang maging 4. Okay? So, burahin na natin ito, ha? Okay. Okay. Value of J, our J is 3. Our I is 2. Ito na yan. Okay? And then, ang gusto nyo, replace nyo lahat. So, I is 2, J is 3. Okay? And then, the values are R sub 3. So, R sub 3 is now 7. And R sub 2 is 10. Okay. Is 7 less than 10? True. So, if that is true, okay, then we're going to swap. So, R sub 2 is 10. That will be placed to temp. Okay? So, 10 will be assigned to temp. And then, R sub 3 is 7. So, 7 will be assigned to R sub 2. R sub 2 will be 7. Nalilito na ba? Sulat ko na lang ulit dito. Yung continuation na itong array na to, ha? Pero we are still referring to one array. Okay? So, yung last natin, 7, 6, 10, 2. Okay? So, we're going to assign R sub 2 with 7. So, R sub 2, ito yun, R sub 2 magiging 7. Okay? And then, temp is 10. Temp is 10. That will be assigned to R sub 3. So, R sub 3 magiging 10. Okay? So, that will be 2, 7, 10, 6. Ito yun. 2, 7, 10, 6. Okay? Go back to the loop. Sabi, hanggang ang J ay maging N. So, increment natin. And then, all the J will now be 4. So, J will be 4. Okay? However, the value of the elements, of course, would not be the same. Okay? Yeah. So, In this case, R sub 4. R sub 4 is 6. Okay? R sub 4 is 6. And R sub 2 is 7. Is 6 less than 7? Okay, true. So if it is true, again, swap. So R sub 2, we are referring to value 7. So 7 will be assigned to temp. And then R sub 4 is 6. Okay? So 6 will be assigned to R sub 2. So parang ganito. Ito ko na nalagay ha. Okay. Sabi niya ulit, yung 6 ilalagay sa R sub 2. Okay? And then, yung value ng temp, ang value ng temp natin is 7, will be assigned to R sub 4. So, R sub 4 will be 7. And the rest, copy lang natin yan. 2 and 10. Okay? Ito na yun. Okay? Next, go back to the inner for loop. Oops, sabi niya hanggang 4 lang. So, that's the end for this loop. So, go back to the outer for loop. Now, I will be incremented kasi sabi niya hanggang maging 3. So, we will have it 3. And then, go to inner for loop. For j equals I plus 1. So, I is 3 plus 1. That becomes 4. And then, perform natin itong buong block of statement. If, okay, tayin ko muna ulit. If R sub j is less than R sub I. Okay, what's the value of j and I? So, I is 3. Palitan mo natin lahat ng I. Okay, para hindi malito. At lahat ng j ng 4. Okay. And then, tsaka natin replace yung values. Okay? So, R sub 3, we are referring to 10. So, this is 10. And R sub 4 is 7. Is 7 less than 10? True. So, if it is true, R sub 3, 10, will be assigned to temp. So, at this time, magiging 10 yan. And then, R sub 4 is 7. That will be assigned to R sub 3. So, R sub 3 is now 7. Let me draw first again. Okay. So, again, 7 will be placed at R sub 3. So, R sub 3 is 7. Okay? And then, temp. Value of our temp is 10. Diba? Ito yan. So, temp will be assigned to R sub 4. So, R sub 4 will now be 10. And the rest, copy. Okay? Next, go back to the inner for loop. Oops, sabi niya hanggang 4 lang yung j. So, tapos na siya. Back to outer for loop. Oops, hanggang 3 lang. Therefore, that's the end. And then, tapos na. Okay. How we sorted the elements in ascending manner? Yes. Okay. So, that's it. Now, for your activity, for your own practice, no? Write a pseudocode that will sort the elements in descending manner. Okay? Madali na yun. Pabaligtad naman, no? So, ganun pa rin. You could use bubble sorting. It tests the first and the second, first, third, first, fourth. Okay? Pwedeng 4 elements lang if you want to simulate it. Okay? However, what I want you to do is this one, yung ginawa din nating pseudocode. But this time, instead of sorting it in ascending manner, it will be sorted in descending manner. So, the first element will be 10, 7, 6, 2. Ganyan siya. Kung ang given niya ay 10, 7, 2, 6, ito yung magiging sorted values niya. Okay? Alright. So, for this one, okay. We have used here 3 arrays, okay? So, 3 arrays, that means we have, we're going to copy 2 one-dimensional arrays. So, that means, we have R1 and R2. R1 is the first array, R2 is the second array, and then R3 is our third array. Okay? So, I want you to simulate this pseudocode, okay? And then, check if all the elements, this is how it should work, okay? Let us say we have 2 arrays, R1, R2. Now, R3, the size of R3 is the size of the array 1 and 2. So, R1 is N1 is 3, N2 is 2. Okay? Size niya is 2, size niya is 3. Okay? So, for our N3, the size of it is N1 plus N2. Kaya, 5 yung elements niyan. Okay? Now, ang mangyayari, sabi, assuming that the arrays are sorted, these 2 arrays are sorted in ascending manner. And of course, when we copy to the third array, it will be copied in ascending manner too. So that means, let us say the elements of this array is 2, 4, 6. And then this one is 1 and 3. Okay? So, the manner of copying will be, it will test the elements of array 1 and array 2. Okay? That's why we have here if. It will test the elements of array 1 with array 2. Okay? So, test niya muna yung laman ng 1. Okay, no first element. Kung sino mas maliit, yun ang, dun siya magkakopy. Okay? So, the idea is this one. If R1 ay na lang, gamitin natin, no? Sige, counter 1 na lang din. Kasi daming variables na yan, no? R1, counter 1. Ito na pala. No need to write. Sige, sorry. Ayan. If R1 counter 1 is less than R2 counter 2, ibig sabihin, if the content of the array 1 is less than the content of array 2, then we will copy from R1. So, we will copy from R1. So, as you can see, R1 counter 1, value of that will be assigned to R3 counter 3. Okay? If otherwise, so that means it will copy from R2. So, R2, yung nasa right side naman. R2 counter 2 will be assigned, the element of that one will be assigned to R3 counter 3. Okay? Now, as you have noticed, since we have copied it from array 1, therefore, counter 1 will be incremented. Okay? So, counter 1 for array 1, counter 2 for array 2, and counter 3 for array 3. Okay? Now, if we're going to copy from array 2, then our counter 2 should be incremented. Right? And either of the two, whether we copy it from array 1 or we copy it from array 2, so either of the two, we increment our counter 3. Okay? So, what will happen? If array1 counter 1 is less than, is it less than? False, di ba? So, kung false, copy from R2. Copy from R2. So, R2 sub counter 1, counter 2, sorry. R2 sub counter 2, which is 1, ang value ay 1, ilalagay natin kay R3 sub 1. Okay, sige. Simulate na nga lang natin. Okay? So, na-explain ko na sa inyo yung logic. So, ganito naman. Simulate ka naman. Baliktad naman ang gawin natin. So, let us say, okay. So, we have 3 counters. CTR1, CTR2, CTR3. So, counter 1, 2, 3. Pare-pareha sila. Okay? Sabi niya, counter 1 is 1. And 1 is the size. So, 3. So, given natin ha. Counter 2 is 1. Size of, or the value of N2 is 2. Okay? While, habang may laman yung arrays. Ito, yun lang ginagawa ng test na to. While array 1 and array 2 has values, okay? So, counter 1 is less than 3 true. Whenever we have or, basta may isang true, automatic true na yung condition. Okay, so if it is true, then we're going to test. If counter 1 is greater than N1, N1 is 3. Is it greater than? Very good. So, false. Then, if counter 2 is 1, N2 is 2, is it greater than? Again, false. So, kung false, dun sa else. Okay? If R1, ba't may mga ganito? Pang-trap lang po siya. Okay? Itatrap natin, baka naman kasi nagbabasa tayo ng elements of the array, pero tapos na pala, wala na pala, ikaw babasahin. Kaya ito yon, ito yung purpose nun, pagtatrap nun. Okay? Itong dalawa. Now, makikita niya mamaya. Else, so we have R1, counter 1 is 1, counter 2 is 1. R1 sub 1 is 2. So, 2. R2 sub 1 is 1. Is 2 less than 1? Okay, false. So, kung false, copy from R2. Dito tayo pupunta. Okay? Counter 2 is 1, counter 3 is 1, okay? So, R2 sub 1 is still 1. That will be assigned to R3 sub 1. R3 sub 1 will be 1. Now, since we copy from array 2, we're going to increment counter 2. So, magiging 2. Okay? Then, balik sa tumawag sa kanya. Okay, so we're done with the if. With the else, okay, so this is the end of that statement, and then increment CTR3, okay, para mag-move siya sa susunod na element, okay? Next, this is a while loop, so we go back to the condition. Counter 2 lang ang nabago, okay? And counter 1, hindi pa rin, so this is true pa rin. Pasok dito, true pa rin? False. Very good. So, kung false yan, punta ngayon dito. If counter 2 is 2 greater than or greater than 2. Okay, not greater than, kaya false. Now, anong value nito? So, counter 2 ang napalitan. Counter 2 is 2. Now, R1 sub 1, we refer to, okay, R1 sub 1 is 2. R2 sub 2 is 3. Okay. Is 2 less than 3? Very good. So, if it is true, then we copy from R1. Okay. Counter 1 is 1. Counter 3 is 2. R1 sub 1. R1 sub 1 is 2. So, 2 will be assigned to R3 sub 2. R3 sub 2 will be 2. Okay? Then, increment counter 1 or CTR1. So, that will be 2. Then, go back, increment counter 3. And then, go back to while loop. Okay? So, counter 1 will now be 2. Is 2 less than or equal to 3? Again, it is true. Therefore, if counter 1 is, the value of counter 1 is 2. Is 2 greater than 3? Very good. False. So, kung false yan, counter 2, CTR2 is still 2. Is it greater than 2? False. Very good. So, kung false yan, counter 1, R1, counter 1. Okay. Try muna natin. So, ulit. Counter 1 this time is 2. Counter 2 is 2. Okay? R1 sub 2. R1 sub 2, we refer to 4. Okay? R2 sub 2. R2 sub 2, we refer to 3. Is 4 less than 3? Okay, false. So, kung false, copy from R2. Again, ito natin yung values nito. Counter 2 is 2. Counter 3 is 3. R2 sub 2. R2 sub 2 is 3. So, 3 will be assigned to R3 sub 3. R3 sub 3 is 3. And then, increment CTR2 magiging 3. Okay? So, balik lang siya. Increment counter 3. So, that will be 4. And then, go back to while loop. Okay. Hindi malito. Burahin ko uli. Okay. Now, counter 1 is 2. Counter 2 is 3. Okay. N1 is 3, N2 is 2. Is 2 less than or equal to 3? True. Okay. Now, may or. O. 3 less than or equal to 2? False. Eh, basta pag or, may isang true, automatic, true pa rin. Okay? If, counter 1. So, what's the value of counter 1? 2. N1 is 3. Is it greater than? Is false. So, else. If counter 2 is 3. N2, what is N2? 2. Is it greater than? True. Very good. So, if it is true, then we will copy from, this will be copy from R1. Okay? So, we will copy from R1. Kasi, wala nang halaman yung R2. Okay? So, copy from R1. So, ano naman ngayon yan? Okay? We have counter 1 is 2. Counter 3 is 4. R1 sub 2. R1 sub 2 is 4. So 4 will be assigned to R3 sub 4. Okay? Then increment counter 1 magiging 3. And then go back here, increment counter 3 magiging 5. Then go back to while loop. Counter 1, this time is 3. Still, it is true because it is now equal. And then if counter 1 is 3, is it greater than 3? False. So kung false, counter 2. Counter 2 is 3, greater than N2. True. Then we copy from R1. Okay? So, ang value ngayon ng ating counter 1 is 3. Okay? R1 sub 3. R1 sub 3 is 6. So, 6 will be assigned to R3 sub, what's the value of counter 3? Okay, 5. So, R3 sub 5 will now contain 6. And then, increment counter 1, so magiging 4. Go back here, increment counter 3, it now be 6. Go back to while loop. Okay. Counter 1 is 4. Is 4 less than or equal to 3? Very good. False. False or false is false. Tapos na. So, as you have noticed, we have copied the elements of the two arrays in sorted manner. Okay? In ascending manner. Okay, so that ends our one-dimensional array and its operations. Okay, so if you have questions, just send a message through Schoolbook or through Messenger. But it is encouraged that you will ask questions through Schoolbook. Okay? Thank you. Moving on with the representations of array. Actually, array is represented in our memory or in the computer memory through its contiguous memory locations. Okay, so arrays are allocated sequentially. So that means in order. Okay, so in contiguous format in our memory locations. Okay, now the size of the array is always fixed. Therefore, the memory required for an array is also fixed. Okay, that means for an array with n element, where each element is one memory word or equivalent to 2 bytes, that is the size of the array, that is the size of the element of an array, then you should have n consecutive words will be allocated to the memory. Now, how are we going to do that? Okay. Assuming that each element in the array named R is k words long, and we would like to determine the starting address of the ith element. Okay. Now, to compute for the address of the ith element, all we have to do is to follow this formula. Start plus k times the difference of I and 1. Okay, so I minus 1. Where start is the starting address of the first element, k is the size of each element, and I is our desired position of an element. So, to further discuss that, let us have this example. Let us say we have an array named R with 10 elements, and each element is one word long. Okay, so in here, as you can see, we have here a memory locations. Okay, and then we started from 0001. I mean, in my simulation, I just have it from 001. Okay, 0001. Although we could have the different values. Anyways, it is stated here that the first element is at address 0003. Okay? Now, the first element is stored at 0003, at address 0003. Okay? Now, Each element, remember, in here it is stated that each element is one word long. So every address or every row, that is equivalent to one word. Okay? So if we have 10 elements for array R, then each element is stored in one particular address. So, at address 003 is the first element. The second element is address 0004, and so on and so forth. So, the last element will be stored at 0012. Okay. Now, what if we have thousands of elements? So definitely, you're not going to draw this one, okay? And you will never know what is the exact location in the memory, okay? We just have it here for our simulation purposes, okay? So that is why we need to follow the formula start plus k times I minus 1, okay? So if we're going to determine the starting address of the sixth element, so sixth element, we are referring to this one. So the sixth element is stored at address 0008. Madali lang kasi we have this figure. So what if wala? Okay, so all we need to do is to make use of this formula. Okay, so what's the value of start? Start is the starting address of the first element. So the starting address of the first element is 0003 plus, what is k? K is the size of each element. As stated here, each element is one word long. Therefore, our K is 1. Okay? And then I is the desired position of the element that we're trying to locate. So, we are referring to the sixth element. Therefore, I is 6. 6 minus 1. Okay. Why minus 1? Because we have to, because 003 or the starting address of the first element is already counted. Okay? So, 0003 plus. So, we do the math. Unahin muna yung nasa loob ng parentheses. So, we have 6 minus 1 is 5. 1 times 5 is 5 plus 0003. So, 0003 plus 5 is 0008. Tama ba? Element R sub 6 is at is at address 0008. Okay? Now, what if we're going to determine the starting address of the ninth element of this same array? Okay? So, again, start is 0003. And K is 1. And I, we refer to the desired element. So, 9 minus 1. So, 0003 plus 1 times 9 minus 1, 8. Tsaka muna natin multiply yon. So, 1 times 8 is 8 plus 003 is 0011 or 0011. So, tama ba? Our R sub 9 is located at 0011. Okay? So, madali lang kung 1 lang yung value ng K. What if the size of each element is more than that? Okay, more than 1. So, let us have this second example. Consider we have an array named M, whose size of each element is 4 words long. And the size of the array is 5. So, we have 5 elements, and each element is 4 words long. So, how are we going to do that? So, let's say, again, we start the address of the first element is at 0003. Okay? So, it says here we have each element is forwards long. So therefore, m sub 1 is from 0003 up to, so we will assign 4 words for this element. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means from 003 up to 006 is for element M1. Okay? And then element M2 is from 007 hanggang 0010. And then M sub 3 is from 0011 up to 0015. Sorry, 0014 or 0014. Okay? And M sub 4 is from 0015 up to 0018. And then M sub 5 from 0019 up to 0022. Okay. That is why whenever we compute, we just compute for the starting address of that element. Okay? So, our start is the starting address of the first element. So, first element is at 0003 plus. Our K is the words long. Okay? So, we have 4 words long. And then I is our desired position. So, 4 minus 1. So, 0003 plus 4 times 4 minus 1 is 3. 4 times 3 is 12 plus 0003. So, we have it 0015. Very good. So, at address 0015, it is the starting address of element 4 or the fourth element. Tama, doon siya nag-start. Okay? Next, we have to determine the starting address of the second element. Okay? So, start against the starting address of the first element. So, we have 0003 plus K is 4. I is 2 because that is what we are trying to find, the second element. So, we will first compute anything that is inside the parentheses. So, 2 minus 1 is 1. And then, between addition and multiplication, we will multiply first. So, 4 times 1 is 4. And then, tsaka natin i-add. So, we have 003 plus 4 is 007. 0007. Okay. So, tama po ba? Our second element is at 0007. Okay? So, that is how we compute elements in a one-dimensional array. So, always remember the formula, start plus k times I minus 1. Alright? So, that ends my discussion. Thank you and God bless.